People think they know everything about Amish relationships because they watched one documentary or read some romance novel, but let me tell you, almost everything you believe is probably wrong. I'm Eliza. I left the Amish community in Pennsylvania 4 years ago, and I'm about to destroy every myth you've ever heard about how we date, marry, and live together. Trust me, the reality is way more complicated and honestly way more interesting than anything Hollywood has ever shown you. Myth number one, and this is the biggest one: Amish marriages are arranged. People are absolutely convinced that Amish parents pick their children's spouses like they're selecting livestock at an auction. That's complete fiction. Nobody arranged my marriage. Nobody arranged my sister's marriage. We chose our husbands ourselves, and yes, we absolutely had the freedom to say no. Parents might have opinions, sure. My mother definitely had opinions about every boy I ever looked at, but she couldn't force me to marry anyone. The truth is, Amish young people meet at youth singings, volleyball games, and church gatherings. We flirt, we get to know each other, and we decide for ourselves who we want to date, just like everyone else. Second myth: Amish women are completely controlled by their husbands. People see that the man is considered the head of the household and they assume Amish women have no voice, no power, no say in anything. That's so far from the truth, it's ridiculous. My mother ran our household. My father might have been the formal head, but when it came to decisions about money, about the kids, about what we were doing, he'd look at her and say, "What do you think?" And whatever she said, that's what happened. Amish women are strong, we're opinionated, we're not meek little servants. Yes, there's a formal structure where the husband is technically in charge, especially in public, but behind closed doors, in healthy Amish marriages, the wife's voice carries just as much weight. I've seen Amish women contradict their husbands in church votes. I've seen them make major financial decisions. The stereotype of the submissive Amish wife is a fantasy created by people who've never actually spent time in our community. Third myth: we can't date multiple people or break up. People think that the first person you date is the person you marry. No questions asked. Absolutely not true. I dated 3 different guys before I got married. One relationship lasted 2 months before we both realized it wasn't working. Another one ended after 6 months. That's normal. Amish people break up. We date around. We figure out who's compatible. The whole point of dating is to see if someone would make a good life partner. If it's not working, you end it and move on. Nobody's forcing you to marry the first boy who gives you a ride home in his buggy. Fourth myth: physical affection before marriage is completely forbidden. Well, that depends on your community, and this is where things get uncomfortable. In some communities, there's a practice called bed courtship or bundling. Yes, you heard that right. A young man would come to a girl's house, go up to her bedroom, and they'd spend time together in bed, usually clothed, talking and getting to know each other. The rule was no intercourse, but kissing, hugging, and yes, what we called schmunzling, which is basically making out, that was allowed. Now, did things sometimes go too far? Absolutely. Plenty of Amish couples end up pregnant before marriage, and then there's a rush to get married before it shows. The church knows this happens, they don't like it, but they'd rather have a hasty wedding than have someone leave the community. So this idea that Amish couples don't even hold hands until marriage? Total myth. The reality is way more complicated. Fifth myth: we marry our cousins and siblings to keep the bloodline pure. This one drives me insane because it makes us sound like some kind of cult. No, we don't marry our siblings. That's disgusting and illegal. Do second cousins sometimes marry? Yes, that can happen, especially in smaller communities where there aren't many options. But it's not encouraged, and most Amish are very aware of genetic issues. That's why young people are encouraged to visit other settlements to find partners. I know guys who traveled to Ohio, Indiana, even as far as Wisconsin looking for wives because the pool in our community was too small. We're not trying to keep some pure bloodline. We're trying to find someone compatible who shares our faith. Myth number 6: Amish relationships are always perfect because divorce doesn't exist. True, divorce is not recognized in the Amish church. Once you're married for life. But that doesn't mean every marriage is happy. I've seen miserable Amish marriages. I've seen couples who barely speak to each other. I've seen emotional abuse. I've seen affairs. I've seen separations where couples live apart but can't officially divorce. The no divorce rule doesn't create perfect marriages. It just means people are trapped if things go wrong. Some people make it work and build strong partnerships. Others suffer in silence for decades. It's not the fairy tale outsiders imagine. Seventh myth: Rumspringa is this wild party time where we do whatever we want. People think Rumspringa means Amish teenagers are out getting drunk, doing drugs, having crazy sex, and then deciding whether to stay Amish. That's such an exaggeration. Yes, Rumspringa is when you're allowed more freedom. You can go to youth singings, you can date, You might try things that are normally forbidden, but most Amish kids during Rumspringa are still living at home, still following most of the rules, still going to church. They're not out at nightclubs every weekend. Some kids do go wild, especially in more liberal communities. But for most of us, Rumspringa was just about socializing with other young people and figuring out if we wanted to join the church. It wasn't this massive rebellion everyone thinks it is. Eighth myth. Men can have multiple wives. Where this even comes from, I have no idea. Polygamy has never been part of Amish culture. Never. Not historically, not now, not ever. We follow Christian marriage principles. One man, one woman, for life. That's it. Maybe people confuse us with other religious groups, but Amish men do not have multiple wives. If a man's wife dies, he can remarry. That's the only exception. But two wives at once? Absolutely not. Ninth myth. We get married super young, like 16 or 17. The reality is, most Amish get married between 20 and 22. Yes, that's younger than the average American, but we're not child brides. Dating usually starts around 16, and then couples date for 1 to 2 years before marriage. So by the time you're actually getting married, you're in your early 20s. I was 21 when I got married. My sister was 22. My brother was 23. That's pretty typical. And the 10th myth. Amish women have no say in who they marry because their fathers make the decision. This ties back to the arranged marriage myth, but it's worth addressing separately. Yes, you need your parents' blessing to get married. And yes, if your father strongly opposes someone, that makes things really difficult. But he can't force you to marry someone you don't want to marry. I've seen girls refuse marriages their parents wanted. I've seen families eventually accept choices they initially opposed. Your parents have influence, but they don't have total control. And honestly, in most cases, if you're dating someone for a year or two and your parents see that you're serious and happy, they'll give their blessing even if that person wasn't their first choice. So there you have it. 10 massive myths about Amish relationships, completely debunked by someone who actually lived it. The truth is, Amish relationships aren't that different from anyone else's. We fall in love, we make choices, we deal with complicated families, we navigate attraction and compatibility and commitment. The difference is we do it all within a very specific cultural and religious framework. But at the end of the day, we're just people trying to find someone to build a life with. Not everything you see in movies or read in books is accurate. Most of it isn't. So next time you hear something about the Amish, maybe question it before you believe it, because chances are it's probably another myth.